Yes, are we ready?
Yes, sorry, yes.
Lovely. Okay, great. All right, everyone. So welcome again to our first part of our SIG events during the BALEAP conference. You can see the title for the presentation, so Social Justice and Classroom Practices Towards an EAP Pedagogy of Transformation and Empowerment. We hope to offer an interactive research paper, and what we mean by interactive I'll explain very briefly. This part is presented mainly by myself and colleagues from our SIG committee, so Iwona and Joe. But as you've seen, all of our SIG committee members are here, and if you at the end have questions, maybe somebody who is not directly involved, but you would like to answer from, then I'm sure all of us can take questions at the end. So just moving on, and because this is our SIG event, so we thought that it would be interesting and important to contextualize that that paper within the aims of our SIG. So if you check our website, which I very strongly encourage you to do, you will see that the first two aims that we have as our SIG is really to further the agenda of raising awareness, of conducting research, and also strengthening the evidence base of impact that social justice can have in our field. And in some ways inspired by that agenda, but also by developments in recent developments in the social domain and also in the EAP community. That is really what inspires this presentation and our research. So the outline for the session. We will have a short introduction, so I will talk you through some background to the project, aims, our approach to theory and to the methodology, and also we'll talk you through the data sets very briefly. And then we're going to focus on the findings. So Joe and Iwona will talk through the findings, and this is where the interactive bit comes into play as well. So we are planning, we will use the Mentimeter to engage you, ask you some questions, and we'll show the results as they keep coming. And we'll also would like to sort of understand how you read our data that we will be presenting. So we will put you into breakout rooms and give you some opportunity to discuss and also share your insights with us. And then after that, very brief closing remarks again from myself. They will be really very brief as the project is ongoing and we are working through the wonderful data that we have collected quite recently. So in terms of the background of EAP, or background of our project, EAP as a field of inquiry and practice is very established in the UK and internationally. In some ways, we can say that one of the key milestones in how our discipline is perceived was the establishment of the Journal of English for Academic Purposes, which happened roughly about 20 years ago. And one of the first articles in the first issue, the first volume of that journal, in that article written by Ken Hyland and Liz Shaw-Lyons, they tried to sort of look back, and they also tried to set the agenda for EAP as a discipline. That article is very interesting and it's very inspiring, because even though it is from 22, and you have a quote from that article and a reference as well on this PowerPoint, it seems that it's so current, so relevant. So what they say in the article, and what is very true of the EAP as a field, as a discipline, is that the discipline is really underpinned by a variety of interdisciplinary approaches, interdisciplinary research. The main agenda, the main focus is on helping students to understand, first to research and to understand for us different varieties of English that are used across disciplines in academic contexts, and also different skills that are so important for students to be able to respond to the requirements. So the discipline is really needs-driven, but also driven by specific requirements of language and literacy as used in particular contexts in academia. So as they explain in that article that this is the key focus of our discipline, and they also acknowledge that there is this, as they say in their own words, as you can see on the slide, a certain vulnerability in our disciplines, as it seems to be ignoring students' cultures. There is certain reluctance to criticality, to critically engage with the values of institutional goals and practices. So very interesting, right from the beginning, this in some ways divide between the very pragmatic focus and then the focus also on issues that are so central to academic education. That is right from the beginning in that journal, and also very strongly acknowledged in our field. Now, moving 20 years forward, so fast forward, in a very recent article published in GIAP as well, Riazi and his colleagues, they have done a systematic review of all of the articles that have been published in GIAP across the last 20 years, or nearly 20 years. And in their review, they say that socio-political aspects of EAP pedagogy have largely remained under-researched and under-reported, with only 10 articles related to the topic having been published in the journal from the conception in 2002 to present time. So what we have done as a committee, we were in some ways intrigued by that very low number of 10 articles, and we have done our initial systematic review of all of the articles in GIAP, and we attempted to say, and I think we will say, that there is much more going on, and the way we conceptualize, or the way maybe concerns related to social justice are conceptualized, are not always necessarily reflected very directly in articles that are reported. So we believe that there is more than 10 articles, and we strongly believe that there is more that's going on. If you just look at GIAP, there are, for example, two very important and very interesting special issues, one on critical EAP and another one on gender and academic writing. So that in itself definitely will probably add up to more than 10 articles.
Down here.
Hello?
No, oh no.
Sorry? Yeah. Sorry, let me just go back. Yes. So being intrigued by that, in some ways, strong pragmatic stance, but also evidence that there is more going on, we in some ways want to not necessarily challenge, but we want to bring the evidence that even though, for example, Riazi and his colleagues, they claim that EAP has not moved beyond its traditional pragmatic and accommodationist orientation, there is evidence in the field, there is much more going on, and we want to bring that evidence through our research. So for that reason, we have the project aims that we have for this research. We have two large project aims. So the first one, to investigate EAP tutors' understanding of what social justice entails in the context of EAP, and how their understandings transform their pedagogical approach and teaching practices. And second research aim also to explore institutional support offers to EAP tutors in embracing social justice considerations in their pedagogical approach and teaching practices. The project is underpinned, probably very not surprisingly, at the level of theory. We draw on critical pedagogy, and we also draw on social study of language and literacy. Excuse me, I think there's some background noise going on. So critical pedagogy, yeah. Iwona, is it possible to mute the participants? Because I'm getting some noise and I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah, I think that somebody's muted just right now. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. So critical pedagogy, that approach emphasizes that teaching should challenge learners to examine power structures and patterns of inequality within the status quo. And social study of language and literacy, really what's important, what is emphasized in that approach is the context, the fact that language and literacy, they are not independent of social context. They are a site of struggle, and they are both interactive, dialogic, dynamic, and really deeply rooted in social life. I'm going to skip through that very quickly, as I'm aware we are running out of time, but if you're more interested, you can view the slides afterwards and sort of engage also more deeply into that account. Now, at the level of methodology, we've conducted a qualitative study, but in our qualitative approach, we are claiming that we are employing an ethnographic perspective. So this means that we have a very focused approach to our data collection. So we do less than a comprehensive ethnography, and we particularly investigate specific aspects of EAP tutors' practices. So our target group is EAP practitioners currently working in higher education in the UK, but also abroad. However, we focus on Anglophone higher education. The data collection, we have semi-structured questionnaires, samples of teaching materials, and follow-up interviews. For the analysis, for the semi-structured interviews, we have conducted inductive coding of question data, and for the semi-structured interviews, we are using narrative analysis. And for the teaching materials, that data set really informs our semi-structured questionnaire. So this is a part of our, let's say, ethnographic approach, and that is how we view those teaching materials. In terms of the semi-structured questionnaires, you can see on the slide most of the questions that we have in the semi-structured questionnaire. So we have two parts. The first part focuses on our participants' EAP background, so some questions related to experience, professional qualification, etc. And in part two, we are focusing specifically on social justice in EAP. So we explore the meanings of social justice. We explore how those meanings, those understandings have evolved through the teaching career of our participants. We also very interested in the influence that those understandings, those meanings have on their classroom practices. And finally, whether they have received any encouragements from institutions that they have worked in. And in general, whether if they zoom out in some ways from their own experience and practices, whether there is a place for social justice in their view in EAP teaching and pedagogy. Then, based on that questionnaire, on the questionnaire responses, we have developed three areas that we are exploring in semi-structured interviews. So the first area, so specific aspects of a participant's conceptualization of social justice, then participants' application of that understanding to their teaching, and finally possible benefits of that element of transformation. In terms of the data set, so 3 data sets, as I have already explained. Now, what I have on the slide is the amount of data we have. So we have 35 responses to semi-structured questionnaires. We have collected so far 2 samples of teaching materials, and we have interviewed 3 individuals. The project is ongoing, so we hope to have more interviews and more samples as we go along. In terms of participant profiles, you can gather from what you can see on the slide. We have participants who have maybe less experience from 0 to 5, but also participants who are very experienced, more than 20 years. All of our participants have, or most of our participants have a university degree, and most of them have a postgraduate degree. Most of them have some level of professional qualification, and in terms of the educational systems where they have worked, most of them have experience of working in UK higher education. So now moving on to the insights from our questionnaire. As you may remember, we have 5 different areas that we look in the questionnaire in terms of the social justice and EAP. So we have converted those questions into specific themes under which we are exploring specific, I would say, codes. So we have understandings of social justice, a social justice journey, impact on classroom practices, then institutional support, and then EAP capacity for social justice. So this is a way of introducing the project. Now we would like to sort of move to have a little bit of interaction with you. Now, Iwona, I think now over to you with this.
Yes, thank you, Weronika. So I've posted to the chat a link to Mentimeter. I hope, please let me know if it works, if it seems to open up. It should take you to a slide with the question, what does social justice mean to you? And 3, oh, thank you so much. So 3 words. It could be one word typed in 3 times if you believe this is the one. It could be 3 different words, and we will share the slide results with you in a form of a word cloud in a minute. I'll be quiet for a moment and let you answer.
Shall I stop sharing, Iwona?
Thank you.
Okay.
There's some interesting words coming up.
Right, yes. Very interesting, right? So equality and equity and fairness and opportunity, that really closely links with what we are getting as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there's some other, like decolonization, which have not, and I see there's one that there's voice and empathy and care, inclusivity, empowerment. There's also tricky lessons, which
I noticed that as well. I wonder what this meant by that as well. Yes,
I can imagine. So I'm just looking at the chat as well. I can't really see the chat because I'm sharing, Weronika.
Let me just see what I can. I don't think there's. Yeah, no, there isn't any activity. Emancipation, one in the chat.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
So these really, so we've got freedom, we've got opportunity, equity, fairness, equality. There's also access. So these are similar to our results. Thank you so much, everyone. So I'm going to stop sharing this one, and Weronika will come back to the slide, and I will take away the 3 first questions. So Weronika, if you can.
Yes, I'm going there. Yeah, okay. Right. Doesn't allow me to go to the next slide for some strange reason. Okay, I'm here. Can you see the whole slide?
Okay, so the results from the Mentimeter were very similar to what we got in our questionnaire, and the social understanding of social justice. The most common answers, the most they kind of revolved around equity, equality, and that was around an access, opportunities, but also equally distributed benefits, rights, also power and responsibility. So it wasn't just about, but there was this idea of even playing field for all. There was also there were also a group of sort of answers around equity in terms of fairness, inclusion, representation and participation. So that participatory parity that we heard this morning in Maha Bali's plenary. There was also freedom from discrimination, but there were also a bit more sort of general as freedom, as in Mentimeter, freedom and safety. And I've got just one extra quote here: if one is in chains, we are all in chains. There were also ideas sort of around accountability and systems, not only to ensure that the rights of others are protected, but also that those who don't protect are held accountable. And there is one which is I just realised now that it's missing from the slide. There were voices around criticality and critical examination of structures, practices, resources, linguistic sort of dominance as well, raising awareness of inequalities, biases, emotional language. And there's also activism and action, so removing barriers, redesigning structures. And again, in the plenary, we heard this phrase sort of taking the door off its hinges, not just opening it. And these were there were echoes of that in our questionnaire as well. So that's the understandings of social justice. And when we move to the next slide, Weronika, how the question was, has your understanding of social justice changed? And here, lots of interesting answers, and again, quite a spectrum. From a very firm no, it's always been there, it's not changed, to few, I would say. I'm not sure. Some that would go around, well, it depends. And there was this geopolitical implication of adopting social justice lens or teaching into EAP practice. Particularly, that's the bottom quote around transnational education, which I believe it's probably going to be. It's an interesting area of discussion. There was quite a few answers, or most of the answers were around yes. My journey with social justice has, and my understanding has changed, and the reasons for change could be around sort of personal growth, coming of age, travel and work abroad, perhaps working in different countries, not only sort of awareness of different ways of being and doing, but also perhaps this experience of limited freedom. There is also a very big motivation for change was simply teaching EAP, being in a classroom with EAP students, international students, non-native speaker students, students with additional needs, refugee students, widening participation students. So students who perhaps themselves experience some sort of marginalization and exclusion. And so being with them, familiarity with them, open up our respondents to those issues. Around the personal growth, I would say the really big one is really just experience of discrimination that the practitioners, teachers experience themselves. That could be also due to their immigrant status, or being non-native speaker, or being dyslexic. There are also, through social events like Black Lives Matters, Me Too movements, also becoming aware of your own privilege and overcoming failures. Okay, Weronika, and the next one was really what impact that understanding and the journey has had on classroom practices. And here again, quite a complex picture. We've selected only some because there would not be enough to talk about. And again, there was geopolitical concerns there. There was only one or two firm voices saying, no, my teaching is accessible, but not, or my teaching has become more rich or diverse, but not because of social justice, but because of my experience. Also, kind of very only generic way, social justice is a Western concept, and I only talk about gender parity. And overall, I would say, again, the yes voices evolved around the what and the how. And so the what was very often around the topics. So the content, so we have climate, gender, race, and the issues around cultural and linguistic sort of dominance, but also criticality and inclusivity, empathy, student-driven curriculum, embracing linguistic variations, and so on. And it also then moved on to approaches to assessment, where the teachers and respondents really engaged with or thought how to change, address and adapt assessment practices to really allow students to perform well, to show their skills and competence. There were only individual voices that said there is no impact, but I'm eager to learn as well. Thank you.
I think that's me. Hello, everyone. Okay, thank you, Weronika. So I think I'll press on because I'm conscious of the time. Can you hear me? Yeah, great, perfect. Okay, so the question here, this one was about institutional support. It was, have you received any encouragement or support from institutions in which you have worked in embracing social justice in your classroom practices? Okay, so you can see on this slide here what some people said, but I would just like to mention very quickly, I think that we had about, we had 7 yes responses to this question. So 7 people said, definitely, absolutely, there is support. I received some support, or I received some encouragement. But then 14 were either not sure about it, or they said there was some messaging, but nothing explicit, really, nothing that would influence my EAP classroom practice. And then 14 people said, actually, no, not really. They didn't feel there was any support or any encouragement. The themes that were popping up, you can see here, projects such as Roma and University of Sanctuary, inclusivity, widening participation. Some people mentioned BALEAP as the institution that was actually, they felt was encouraging social justice classroom practices. There was also this phrase of tick boxy attitude. So yes, we've got it, it is there, but nothing else, you know, just make sure that you read the email, and that was basically it. So what really, I think, struck us that, for example, you know, thinking about last year's events with Black Lives Matter movement, this, for example, was not mentioned at all, for example, in this question, in the response to this, in the responses to this question. So I think with the questions, like I said, we only have a few here on the right hand side. Yes, my institution is typically a place where social justice is key. Students come from very different backgrounds with different knowledge, skills and resources, and the university is making every effort to help them study despite all of the difficulties. So that was one of the yes answers. But then we've got not specifically, but no obstacles either. So I think you are free to interpret it, really, I think, for yourself. No, it has never been referred to explicitly. So we had some sort of weak no's, like this one here, not specifically, but no obstacles either. Or I'm sure if I asked for the support, I suppose it would be given to me. And then there were some strong no's, like this one here. No, it has never been referred to explicitly. Not really. Especially the bottom one, you can see, I do not think that fostering the power, freedom and aliveness of students or staff is what the neoliberal higher education institution sausage factory is about. Okay, thank you. Weronika, can I ask for the next slide? Thanks. That's the final question in the survey. And the question here was, in your view, is there a place for social justice in EAP teaching and pedagogy? Okay, so I'll give you a moment to perhaps have a look at it first, and then I'll just summarize. So you can see the emerging themes again, from absolutely to yes, but to no. The emerging themes were mainly around curriculum planning and assessment, critical pedagogy, a case of renaming already fair practices, EAP as a hub discipline and space of power, but, for example, lack of clarity as to how to achieve it. So lack of this explicit instruction support and so on. In here, so in terms of what people thought, like Weronika said before, we had 35 responses to the survey. 27 people here said yes, absolutely, definitely, there is place for social justice in EAP classroom. 4 people were not actually sure if there is a place for it, and then we had 3 no's. 3 people said definitely not, or just no, there isn't a place for this, it's not a place for that. Okay, Weronika, can I ask for the next slide? Lovely, thank you very much, and that's it from me. We are going to send you to the breakout rooms now, and we will ask you to discuss these 2 questions here. So number 1, which of the reported results have resonated with you the most, and then was there anything surprising or maybe unexpected in the results. Okay, if you would like to discuss that in the breakout rooms, and then we will ask you to share what you discussed when we are back in the main room. I think we've got the rooms set up probably, or getting them. Yeah.
So the breakout rooms are for about 7 minutes or a bit less as well. So we'll send a message to the breakout room when they will be closed. Thank you. We're suddenly back to the first slide. So let me just, yes, okay. Yeah, so thank you so much for discussions in the breakout rooms. I really enjoyed the discussion with my peers, with my colleagues in the breakout room. I'm really looking forward to reading your what you are sharing in the chat now. Now, I just want to touch like for 10 seconds, although I'm so aware that this does just no justice if we're talking about social justice. That does no justice to the data that we have. The 3 case studies that we have from the interviews. So, I mean, you can see on the slides what are the characteristic features of these particular tutors. If I were to summarize them together, I would say that none of our interviewees, none of our cases creates a special lesson for social justice or special discussion on a particular topic. They all tend to use these considerations as a particular framework to raise students' awareness, to help them be more critical, to challenge their own cultural and personal backgrounds, and also to challenge also the UK culture, especially in Anne's story. That was very, very, very evident. She was not only talking about maybe problems elsewhere, she was focusing on the UK society as well. And she engaged students in project work, in critical reflection. There's quite a lot of also focus in our case studies on those say political issues or political tribalism, as Zach's formulation of that. So emphasizing the equality as key principle that should drive our social justice principle. And then Emma's story, who really reworked her program to incorporate social justice consideration in every step of the way. So from task instructions to materials to assessment, to give that new space for everyone. So what is really enlightening and transformational in those stories is that it happens within within the mission of EAP, to prepare students for university education, to prepare students to use language with competence and with confidence as well. So that was really say enlightening in those case studies. Now, just a few points of summary. I feel that the first four bullet points is really a summary what Iwona and Joe have presented. The social justice work really does not move away practitioners from the focus on language. It often depends on specific context and tutors' aims, and tutors in their work are driven by very broad conceptualizations of social justice. So it may mean a different thing for different tutor at a different point in time in their career. And also that fact that even though they are not explicitly supported by the institutions, that there is space that they can occupy. The final 2 points is, I would say, really trying to bring those insights together. So social justice in EAP teaching helps to open a new space and move from remedial provision to occupy a space at the heart of students' educational experience. And I think this is really, I would say, at the heart of our presentation as well, social justice considerations as lens through which we help to foster and to nurture that critical attitude that is so essential in academic study. And then tutors provide opportunities to explore topics, to negotiate meanings, to become active agents, for students to become active agents in their educational journey. So moving beyond pragmatic, what I started from that article by Ken Hyland and Sean Lyons, it's really possible, and it doesn't really mean abandoning the language, the disciplinary conventions, and everything that's so important for EAP practitioner. Now, closing remarks, I brought 2 quotes that I particularly connected with from the questionnaire. So you can have a look at those quotes there. And I want to finish with the question, really. I know we don't have time really for question and answers, but maybe if you want to stay for a few minutes more, those of you who can, I would like to finish with that final question. If we embrace social justice as a lens through which we view our teaching practices, where will it take the EAP as a field of inquiry and practice? Will we be on the outskirts of academia, or will we be maybe in a more central position? So that's really the end. The final 2 slides, we have a link to our project. So if you want to participate, if you want to share with us your insights, if you Google our website, and if you go to initiatives and click on the initiatives, there is our call for participants, and there is a link to our study with all of the research documents. And if you want, then please we'll be really honored to have your data as well. It takes about half an hour to answer the questions we have. Thank you so much. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you, Weronika, and thank you Sorry, I'm muting and unmuting myself. Thank you. Thank you very much to everyone for coming and staying extra couple of 7 extra minutes. I believe we've had a break. And thank you for all the comments and for being engaged with what we're doing. We recognise faces, we recognise names, and we are really delighted that we're not just talking to ourselves in this SIG, that we have people who follow, and we may agree or disagree on particular points, but I think collectively we've got a chance to really do something special. And especially if we hear such inspiring voices like the plenary this morning. If you missed it, I would strongly encourage you to go back to it. So we are having a break now, and the second part of SIG event for this conference is around EAP for refugees. Some interesting talks, and this event is held in memory of our colleague from the University of Glasgow, who unfortunately passed away this year. So I'll see you there. And if I don't see you, then I will see you around, and please keep in touch, take part in our research. And yeah, thank you very much for coming.